it's important, I think, to own our mistakes to our kids and our families. Sometimes if we have a facade of perfection, especially I think if we have teens or adult kids, we don't want to admit, that we did wrong, or messed up. Like, no, I totally meant to do that, because you don't want them to lose respect for you, right? But I think it's important to show our children that even as adults and moms, we make mistakes, and we need God's redemption and mercy and grace, right? Because how are they going to know that it's okay for them to go to God and when they mess up, if they haven't seen us do it? And so, I think just being more willing to show them, and so that they can seek God's forgiveness as well when they need Him. Good morning and happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. As Nick so nicely introduced me, I'm Lisha Stowe, the children's pastor. And about every 3 years, they let me out of the cave in the back and let me come and, join the grown-ups. I'm really more comfortable with the kids, but I like you guys pretty well, too. One thing that I always like to do with the kids in the back, it's we do like a video icebreaker or Bible trivia game. So I thought maybe the grown-ups might like to do that too. So we're going to play a little video trivia game, What Do Moms Want? And you'll have choices A, B, C, and you can just shout out which one you think is the right answer, but use your inside voices, okay? All right, so here we go.
What does Mom want? The game that tests your skill in knowing what moms want. We surveyed over 100 moms. See if you can guess how they answer these questions. Round 1. Which gift did more moms want? A scented candle. B, a cozy blanket. Or C, uninterrupted sleep.
Which one do you think?
Most moms said they would rather have B, a cozy blanket. Oh, fabulous. Round 2. Most moms said, I would rather receive a card that is A, thoughtful, B, handmade, or C, a Visa credit card. And most moms said they would rather have B, a handmade card. Well, of course. Round 3. We asked moms if they could only have one of the following. Which did they choose? A, a clean car. B, a clean kitchen. Or C, clean folded laundry.
Or D, all the above.
And most moms said B, a clean kitchen.
That works.
Round 4. How did most moms complete this sentence? It's been the longest time since I've had A day with my kids, B, a day with my friends, or C, a day to myself.
What do you think?
And the answer is, most moms have not recently had a day to themselves. Well, it's about time. Round 5. When we asked moms what they want right now, did they say A, a cup of coffee, B, a massage, or C, a pint of ice cream and a Hallmark movie? Most moms said B, a massage. And here comes round 6. When we asked moms which of these have you thought about most recently, was it A, starting an Etsy shop, B, some terrible thing that will never happen, or C, why a friend hasn't replied to your text yet? And most moms said they most recently thought about B, some terrible thing that will probably never happen. Oh, moms can worry sometimes. Round 7. I would appreciate it if my child were to A, give me flowers, B, do the dishes without being asked, or C, write a poem about me. Most moms said B, do the dishes without being asked, and that last part's the most important. Well, I'm afraid our time is up. Congratulations and thanks for playing What Does Mom Want?
Good job. You all won, and if you were back there, I would give you candy for playing, but sorry, I didn't bring any candy with me out here, so that was fun. I think a lot of those I would have chosen D for all of the above if I had had the choice to do that. So as my gift to you for Mother's Day, my points will be short and sweet, and I think we'll finish early so you can go out to lunch. So that's my gift to you. All right. So the first thing, what moms really want for Mother's Day, and of course we do love flowers and doing the dishes and all of those things, but these are a little bit deeper things that are, not so surface level that, you do the dishes and then somebody puts something in the sink and then, you got dirty dishes again. Some things just don't last very long, but these things I think will last longer, be longer lasting gifts. First of all, moms want to be seen. And does it feel like once you become a mom that nobody sees you anymore? You're Johnny or Susie's mom, and people ask, oh, how are they doing? Oh, they look so cute, and those kind of things. And nobody notices that you didn't sleep the night before or your shirt's on wrong side out, So I think all moms want to know that people see them and ask them how they're doing. And I know as a mom, when my kids were little, a lot of times I wasn't doing well. I was depressed, but I thought, I'm a Christian. I shouldn't be depressed. I thought I had to be perfect. I would see other moms, oh, that mom has 5 kids, and she looks like she's got it together, and I only have 3. So, I didn't want to give up, that facade of, I need to be perfect for people to think I'm a good mom. So, and because I was depressed, and, nobody really asked me how I was doing, they would pay attention to my kids, but nobody really noticed me or saw me and how I was feeling. It wasn't until a friend invited me to come over and do a Bible study with her, and I can't remember the name of the book. It was something about peeling an onion, but just about going through the layers of your emotions and talking them through and praying through those things to get to the bottom of, why you're struggling, why you're feeling depressed. And so that really meant a lot to me. That was kind of the beginning of my healing journey of being healed from depression. And she saw that I was struggling and reached out to me in a meaningful way. And the story of Hagar in the Bible shows moms that they are not alone. God sees their struggles and helps them, your struggles and helps you. And really, all of these things can apply to women in general. All women want to be seen. And I do feel like of all the books that have ever been written, that the Bible really honors and appreciates women and mothers more than any other book. And, we need to also do the same. So let's look at the mom in the Bible that wanted to be seen in the middle of her struggles. Everyone's familiar, of course, with Abraham and Sarah. And Sarah gets a lot of attention because she became the mother of Isaac and of God's, chosen people. But another mother in this story is often forgotten and overlooked, and her name is Hagar. And Hagar she wasn't one of the, chosen people. She was an outsider from Egypt, a foreign woman purchased to be the servant to Sarai, Abram's wife. And you have to remember, this was after Abram had had an encounter with God, who led him from his home country to another place that God promised him. And God had also promised him and his wife Sarai that they would have a son that would become a great nation, who would be Isaac. But this was before they saw the fulfillment of that promise. It was before God changed their names from Abram and Sarai to Abraham and Sarah. So they were still trying to figure out how all this was going to work, this whole, promise thing. And they thought maybe they needed to do something to help God fulfill the promise to Sarai, to fulfill the promise. And as we often do, we get tired of waiting and we try to, fix things ourselves. So Sarai decided that her servant Hagar could have the baby and help them fulfill the promise. And this is Sarai's idea, and Abram went along with it. But as usually goes when we take matters into our own hands, things don't always turn out the way that we think. Hagar became pregnant, and she began to treat Sarai with contempt. And Sarai retaliated by treating Hagar so harshly that she ran away. And while she was alone in the desert, the angel of the Lord appeared to her. And so we pick up in Genesis 16, verse 7 through 13, which would be the next verse. The angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring of water in the wilderness along the road to Shur. The angel said to her, "Hagar, Sarai's servant, where have you come from and where are you going?" "I'm running away from my mistress, Sarai," she replied. The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her authority." And then he added, "I will give you more descendants than you can count." Therefore, Hagar used another name to refer to the Lord who had spoken to her. She said, "You are the God who sees me." She also said, "Have I truly seen the one who sees me?" Imagine that. And in the Old Testament, when it mentions the angel of the Lord, this is often a pre-incarnate Christ figure because, till Jesus was born a man, he still existed. And so she's having a personal encounter with the angel of the Lord, Jesus. And she was a foreigner. She probably didn't, worshipped other gods. She probably didn't worship the same God Abraham and Sarai did. But God still, singled her out, like he saw her distress. And so she gave him that very personal name, the God who sees me, or the living one who sees me. He came to her in the midst of her depression and her desperation. He gave her guidance and direction what to do. She knew she wasn't alone anymore because she had a personal encounter with the true God who saw her and cared for her. This situation repeated itself in Genesis 21 when Hagar and Ishmael were sent away. And once again, the angel of the Lord sees their difficult situation and comes to provide, encourage them, and give them hope. So we pick up in Genesis 21, verse 14 through 19. So then Abram sent her away with her son, and she wandered aimlessly in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water was gone, she put the boy in the shade of a bush. I think Ishmael was probably 13 or so. He wasn't super little, but he was still a teenager. Then she went and sat down by herself about 100 yards away. "I don't want to watch the boy die," she said as she burst into tears. But God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven, "Hagar, what's wrong? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Go in to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants." And then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well full of water. She quickly filled her water container and gave the boy a drink. So Hagar wasn't perfect, obviously, but God saw her situation, and he showed her his mercy and grace. As a mother with an unplanned pregnancy, and then as a single mom having to raise a son by herself, God saw her and showed up in the middle of her distress to speak to her, help her, give her guidance and direction for the future, and to encourage her. All moms need to be seen in the middle of the mess of motherhood when they are overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their control, and reassured that God sees them, sees you, and cares for you, and they need to hear that from others who will do the same for them. The second thing is moms want to be heard. How many times as a mom have you said to your kids, "Do you hear me? Did you hear me?" More than you can count, right? So you ask for help around the house, or pick up your toys, or put on your shoes, hurry up, we got to get out the door. And you just feel like you have to keep repeating yourself over and over again because they ignore you. Oh, Crystal's back there nodding her head. Yeah, does that sound familiar, Mom? Did you hear me? And you feel like you're in a commercial, did you hear me now? Do I need to say it again? Did you hear me now? But sometimes we also do the same thing with God. We cry out to God and say, "God, did you hear me? Did you hear me when I prayed this prayer? I don't see anything changing. I don't see the answer to my prayer. And so we cry out to God, and wonder sometimes, does he hear us? Is he listening? And I think all moms and women have done this at some point in time. The story of Hannah shows us that God does hear and answer our prayers and comforts us. Hannah wanted desperately to be a mother, but she didn't have any children yet. She was so depressed that she cried all the time. Her husband tried to console her, but nothing could soothe the aching in her heart. Her husband's other wife had children and teased Hannah, making her life unbearable. And then we pick up with 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 9 through 18 to see what happens next. So once after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. And she made this vow, "O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire life, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut." As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her. Seeing her lips moving, but hearing no sound, he thought she had been drinking. "Must you come here drunk?" he said. "Throw away your wine." "Oh, no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I am a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow." Any mother knows how that feels, to pray out of anguish and sorrow many times. In that case, Eli said, "Go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him." "Oh, thank you, sir," she exclaimed. And then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. So after who knows how long, months, years of just being sad and sorrowful and crying out to the Lord, she finally took her sorrow and discouragement to God and poured out her heart to him in prayer. And Eli the priest saw her praying, and when she explained what she was doing, he told her that God would hear and grant her request. Having reassurance that God heard her completely changed her attitude and her outlook on life. God did hear Hannah's cry and gave her a son, Samuel, who grew up to be a great prophet. God knows the desires of our heart, those that have children and those that do not have children but want them. He has a plan for you, whether you have a child or not. He hears our cries and sees our tears. Knowing that he hears our prayers gives us comfort and peace, whether he answers the way that we want or not. He will fulfill his plans for us and for our children and his purposes in his way and his timing. We can trust that our prayers are heard. He says that in Hebrews 4:16. So let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will receive his mercy, and we will find grace to help us when we need it most. Moms want to be appreciated, right? Moms do, and women in general, they do so much for their families, and sometimes you just don't feel appreciated. There's clothes and dishes to be washed, lunches to be made, take the kids to school, to the doctor, to sports and music lessons, take the dog to the vet, help with homework and school projects that are due tomorrow. And then there's always chaperoning field trips, cooking dinner, bathing the kids, reading them the Bible and praying with them before bed, waking up in the middle of the night when they're sick and have nightmares, on and on and on. So there's just so much that women and moms do for their families. And the story of Proverbs 31 woman shows moms that God rewards their hard work and they deserve to be praised. So have you ever read Proverbs 31? It starts out in verse 1, the sayings of King Lemuel contain this message, which his mother taught him. Now, many people think that Proverbs 31 was actually written by Solomon and that King Lemuel was a pen name, and this was about the sayings of his mother Bathsheba. So whether that's true or not, this wife, mother, woman is definitely needing some appreciation. And so we pick up in verse 28. Her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. There are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive, and beauty does not last, but a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. Reward her for all she has done. Let her deeds publicly declare her praise. And I think that the key verse in that is a woman who fears the Lord. A woman, no matter what you do, if you fear the Lord and you are seeking the Lord and praying for your family and for your children, that is the most important thing you can do of anything else that you try to do. If you read the whole chapter, it talks about how this woman, this Proverbs 31 woman, gets up early, feeds her family. She sews clothes for everybody, makes bedspreads and curtains. I tried that once. And buys a field and sells it. So she's maybe a working mom too. She's out in the workplace. And on and on and on the list goes. And I have to confess that I have a love-hate relationship with the Proverbs 31 woman. Sometimes I just completely ignored her. And then one time I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. And so I went through every verse one by one. And I thought, okay, how can I do this verse, in reality in my life? And it didn't turn out very well, I have to say, because for one thing, getting up early in the morning, my husband can tell you he's the early bird, and I am not a morning person. I do not see the sun come up very often. And so when the kids were little, it was like cold cereal and out the door. They were doing good just to get out the door. And so I was like, well, I kind of failed that part. And then it talks about her sewing and making everything for her family. And I have to give a shout out to my mom. She is an amazing seamstress. When I was little, she made me all the cute little clothes. From the time I was little all the way till I got married, I had really cute clothes because my mom could sew. Thank you, Mom. And yes, give her praise. But I didn't get that gene, from her. Unfortunately, it skipped a generation to my oldest daughter. She can whip up an outfit and then wear it the next day. So, but this is what happened to me. I thought when she was born, I thought, I'm going to make her cute little clothes, just like my mom did. And so she was about a month old, and I started trying to sew an outfit. And then I realized I have a learning disability when it comes to reading patterns. They just do not make sense to me. And so about 4 months later, I finished, but then it didn't fit her, She just grew so fast. I said, well, this is not going to work. She's not going to have any clothes. So I just went to yard sales and bought her clothes. So, but I think, I was just trying to be too literal about missing the point. And the point is, moms do so much for their families. And whatever they do, your list is going to be different than the Proverbs 31 woman. You have different things that you do for your families. And whatever you do, the moms are always putting their families ahead of themselves, And so they shouldn't have to wait until they're old. And, people say, oh, when your children are grown, they will, appreciate you. Well, no, you shouldn't have to wait that long, Moms long to know that their children and husbands appreciate all they do for their families each and every day, not just on Mother's Day. So tell your mom you love her today and appreciate her. And do the dishes for her. So next, moms want redemption and hope. So moms want to have a perfect family, a perfect marriage, be the perfect mom to their kids. You may not, really think about that, but deep down, that is really your desire, is to be perfect. But things happen, and they don't often go the way that we plan. So I have a funny story for you about how things go wrong in my pursuit of trying to be the perfect mom and in the pursuit of family fun for my children. So back in the day, we did not have Google. So if moms wanted to come up with some ideas or whatever, we couldn't Google it. But we had this wonderful thing that would come out every month, and it was called Family Fun Magazine. Anybody remember what that? Oh, we got two that remember. Three, yeah. Family Fun Magazine. So we just waited. Oh, couldn't wait for Family Fun Magazine to come out and just look through there and see what all wonderful things you could do for your children. They would just think you were wonderful, and you'd have lots of family fun. So I got the April issue. It was like, what to do for April Fool's Day. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. So they had this one idea, and it didn't cost any money or any extra, preparation. And your kids would just love it, and they would just think it was so funny, and it would be great. So I was like, I've got this. So the idea was, at night, the night before April Fool's, you would switch all the children to different beds while they're asleep. And then they would wake up and they would be like, I'm not in my bed. And they would think it was so funny, and everybody would have a good laugh, right? So I thought, I have got this. I can do this. Well, forget my husband. He sleeps through the night. We did many things at night. Many things happened at night. He never knew any of these things. In fact, he was in the first service, and that may have been the first time he's heard this story. So we had quite the nightlife when he was asleep. So waited till the children were all in bed. They were about 6, 4, and 2 at the time. And so I thought, I can still pick up the 6-year-old. Yeah, okay, I can do this. So somehow they were sound asleep. I picked them up. I switched them into different beds. None of them woke up. And I thought, I have totally got this. I've aced it. Well, it wasn't too long later, one of them peed in the bed. But it wasn't their bed. And they were very upset anyway. And then another one got sick. And they weren't in their bed. And then another one woke up with a bad dream. They weren't in their bed. And they were all awake. This was a terrible, terrible fiasco. And so I was running around changing sheets, comforting children that were upset and sick, and changing their clothes, and putting them back in their beds, and telling, I'm sorry, just go back to sleep, So needless to say, that was not family fun, okay? So I never celebrated April Fool's Day ever again. Just didn't want to try that. So I tell you that because then I'm not the perfect mom, and that things do go wrong. Even the best plans you have will go wrong sometimes. And it's important, I think, to own our mistakes to our kids and our families. Sometimes if we have a facade of perfection, especially I think if we have teens or adult kids, we don't want to admit, that we did wrong, or messed up. No, I totally meant to do that, because you don't want them to lose respect for you, right? But I think it's important to show our children that even as adults and moms, we make mistakes, and we need God's redemption and mercy and grace, right? Because how are they going to know that it's okay for them to go to God and when they mess up, if they haven't seen us do it? And so, I think just being more willing to show them, and so that they can seek God's forgiveness as well when they need him. And the story of Naomi and Ruth shows moms that God redeems the sorrows and mistakes of the past and gives us hope for the future. Now, Naomi was a mom who started out full of hopes and dreams, but then she experienced tremendous hardship and loss. And, many of you are probably familiar with that. And she became bitter at God and at the world. She had to move away from her home, and then she lost both her husband and her 2 sons, and she had no hope for the future. And Ruth also lost her husband and really her opportunity to have a family when her husband died. But she didn't let bitterness overwhelm her. She resolved to support and help Naomi and trust her God with the future. As they returned to Canaan, Ruth didn't dwell on the past, but she jumped right in with what was at hand to provide for herself and Naomi. She started gleaning in the fields, and God rewarded her hard work with provision from Boaz. Boaz represented the future and hope for both Ruth and Naomi, but most importantly, he was the Redeemer. And so he represented Christ, our Redeemer. And in time, Ruth did have children, and Naomi had grandchildren. So let's pick up in Ruth chapter 4, verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth into his home, and she became his wife. When he slept with her, the Lord enabled her to become pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women of the town said to Naomi, "Praise the Lord, who has now provided a redeemer for your family. May this child be famous in Israel. May he restore your youth and care for you in your old age, for he is the son of your daughter-in-law who loves you and has been better to you than 7 sons." So God redeemed what was lost and gave them hope and joy for the future. And as many of you know, this child Ruth and Boaz were the great-grandparents of King David. So, the whole line of redemption, taking what was lost and sorrow and turning it around into something good. God is good at that. Many times mothers and all of us suffer loss that leaves us grieving and feeling hopeless and helpless. Redemption signifies the purchase back, the deliverance from bondage, and restoration of what was lost. When we find ourselves in a situation, we can either respond like Naomi with bitterness and hopelessness, or like Ruth with perseverance and trust God that he will turn the situation around. Sometimes as mothers, we make mistakes or we face circumstances that seem overwhelming. Jesus knows and he cares for us. He is near to the brokenhearted, and he is acquainted with our grief and carries our sorrows. He can give us beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and a garment of praise for a spirit of heaviness, it says in Isaiah. He is the Redeemer, and he promises to give us and our children a future and a hope no matter what has happened in the past. And you know what? The beginning of Romans, I love that very first verse, chapter 8, verse 1, that says, "There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." Because you can't change the past. But there's no condemnation. Jesus doesn't condemn us for our mistakes. So why should we hold on to any guilt or grief from the past? The last thing is moms want to leave a legacy. I think most of all, moms want to leave a legacy. When your kids are little, you look ahead and dream about what the future will be like. But mostly, you're looking forward until they sleep through the night, or walk, or potty train, old enough to go to school, to drive, to graduate, and to be adults. Yay, they're on their own. But not always, You're still going to be a mom to them, even when they're your adult children. But you don't often realize you're creating a legacy moment by moment, day by day, year by year. When your kids are grown, you realize how quickly it all was over. And you don't get any do-overs. But you're still a mom even to your adult kids and your grandchildren. And the legacy you build continues on in their life even after you are gone. I often say things to my adult children like, "Oh, you get that from your father," or "Oh, I do that too," or "You get that talent like sewing from your grandmother or art from your grandfather." And my kids will recognize things too that they do, like me or my husband. And it's good to recognize what's been passed on to the next generation. Whatever stage of life you're in with your children, Be intentional about what legacy you want to leave with them. The story of Lois and Eunice shows moms that God can help them leave a legacy of faith to their children and grandchildren. You might not recognize the names Lois and Eunice, but they were the grandmother and mother of Timothy in the Bible. Paul wrote a letter to Timothy and gave them special recognition for the role they played in Timothy's life. We read in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5, I remember your genuine faith, for you share the faith that first filled your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and I know that same faith continues strong in you. My mother definitely gave me a legacy of faith that she passed down to me. She prayed with me when I was little and for me and took me to church, raised me in a Christian home. And she was an example of faith to me from my childhood until now. Thanks, Mom. Through all the ups and downs of life, that faith has sustained me, and I pray that my children will experience that as well. I think all mothers and grandmothers want to leave a legacy. From the very, very beginning, we are doing the very best we can to raise healthy, happy children who love God. It's not easy. There's not a handbook of what to do, except for the Bible, And every mom faces different circumstances, and every child has different personalities and needs. And we will make mistakes, and our kids will make mistakes, and that's okay. Like I said, there's redemption, there's forgiveness, there's hope. The best legacy we can give them is to demonstrate faith in God, even in difficult situations, and to pray. Pray, pray, pray. Whatever mom you identify with, God is with you, and you are not alone. He is the one who sees you. He hears your prayers. He assures you that you are loved and appreciated. He redeems your losses and gives you hope for the future. And he lets you know that you can leave a legacy that will last beyond your lifetime. Thank you.